I'd love to kick it off by you just talking a little bit about your filmmaking background and your film that's currently going through the award season.
Okay. Yeah, so my film is called Most Beautiful Island. It's the first film that I ever wrote and direct, and is nominated to the John Cassavetes Award, that is a specific award for films that are under $500,000 in budget. And this is my first time ever directing films. I never directed a short film either. I was an actor my entire life since I was 17 or so. And at some point I decided to, go to the other side and write a story that I could also perform in it. So I played the lead in the story.
And then I'm Benny Safdie. Hello, thank you for coming. Yeah, the film that we're at the Spirit Awards with this year is called Good Time. And yeah, my brother and I directed it, and he wrote it with our longtime collaborator, Ronnie Bronstein, produced by our other collaborators, it's just kind of, it took us a while to get to a point to make a movie like this. And it stars Rob Pattinson as well as myself. I play his brother, who is developmentally disabled. And yeah, it was just it was one of those films where we knew we had a little bit more. It's the first time we were making a movie that didn't qualify for the John Cassavetes Award, which was because we were nominated for that not in 2014, I think. And it was like we were nominated for that twice. We were always kind of there, which is great. There's a lot that helps you push and you kind of figure things out. And with this, we were making movies in the same exact way. We had more money, but it still felt exactly the same. You're always struggling to figure something out. But as you pointed out, yes, to perform in the film at the same time is something different. So in this case, it was I have my brother who I work with, so that helps. It helps a little bit, but you have to be aware of a lot of things at the same time.
I know that both of you have kind of had trajectory careers in acting and also in filmmaking. What was that first moment for you when you went, I think I want to make a film?
For me, I guess it goes back to high school and college. I was going to be a physicist, and I was like well on to it. I could tell you all about the Standard Model, probably still could today. Axions, muons, all that stuff, and cosmic rays, and I was in it. And I was going to I went to college for that, and then my brother was going to Boston University, and he said, and I wasn't quite happy where I was. I wasn't, because I realized towards the end, but it was too late. I had already applied everywhere, but I had realized I liked the telling of the story of the physics more than I liked the physics itself. And this one teacher I had would write, I remember very vividly, he crossed out this whole sections of my paper and just tore it apart. But he did this strange squiggly line on the side of the page with A, and then it squiggled all around, and then said Z. He said, if you can walk me from here all the way to here, he said, then you've done it. But he was talking about the physics equation, but then I realized, that kind of reminds me of The General by Buster Keaton, which I really liked at the time. And then I was like, if you somehow popped into the middle of that movie, you'd have no idea what's going on. But from the beginning to the end, you're kind of walk through in a physics type equation. Long story short, I ended up going to film school, communication school, and I acted in my first short film just because I was like, I'm pulling from my life, so why not do it, because I know it. And so it was an exaggeration of myself to some extreme, as is the role that I play in Good Time. But yeah, it was just a matter of kind of necessity at first, and the two went hand in hand. You're making a film, and what's going to make the best film, and if it is you in it, then great. If not, sometimes it doesn't work. But
what about for you?
Yeah, I kind of went a different way than Benny. I studied acting, and that was my first love and my passion. And basically, over the years, I was that actor that has moments that things went really well, and then nothing was good for a long time. And in those times of frustration and so on, I started to think, well, how about I create my own work somehow? And I didn't know how at the beginning. So what it was closer to me and easier was theater. So I started to produce my own one-woman shows, and the first one I did, it did very well, and I went to travel to Africa and other places, and it just basically gave me the courage to continue with that, because it was extremely fulfilling to know that you have some control of your career that I never experienced before as a struggling actor. So over the years, I continued with those shows, and eventually, since I've been a film lover since maybe since I was 20 or something, when I discovered films in original version. Like, I grew up watching movies dubbed in my country, which is terrible. And then I discovered the original version in this amazing art house movie theaters in my city, and I start loving films in a different way, and so on. So anyway, eventually I decided that I wanted to create another story, but with a different medium, which I didn't know that much. I only knew the visuals that I wanted and how I wanted to tell the story, but I had no idea of the language of filmmaking, because I never went to film school. But because I make this decision late in life, I just decided to go ahead and do it, and just learn from other people who will help me to make this film, and don't go to film school and so on. So I just went that path, and it took me many years to make the film, and throughout those years I kind of like learned different things. Not like film school.
No. I will add to the what was interesting about it was a communication school, so it was like film was a part of it, but it was about just like journalism and everything. But the most important classes for me were not even the film technical side of it. It was the film studies. You'd learn about the films of the French filmmaker Robert Bresson or Mike Leigh, the early films of Mike Leigh, or just other class, even like a philosophy class that I took. There was a cities and culture. I learned more from the classes that you had to take as part of the other part of it. It wasn't just like a technical film school, which was important for me because I wanted to learn other things. And I really don't think you can make movies unless you understand, the world around you, and even if you're acting, you need to kind of understand the things around you and just to kind of pull from and take from. So the good thing about that program is you don't go in and then you don't pick up a camera and make a movie right away. You have to take and learn because you have to have something to say, really.
Yeah. That's why Herzog always says, go live life. Like, that's his biggest piece of
Yes.
advice to filmmakers. Did you grow up with artistic families that kind of nurtured and encouraged this, or was it, were the arts something that you kind of found on your own path?
In my case, not artistic at all. So it was kind of like I don't know, I think it was high school when, there were these classes to do theater, and I realized how amazing that was, but not encouragement from my family at all.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a conscious part. My dad wanted to be a filmmaker, but he couldn't be just because he had 2 kids, and he couldn't. And he came here when he was 18 from France and Italy, so he couldn't. But he bought a camera with like this one. He got like the first camera. They got a Video 8 camera, and he would film everything, and he would film all these little things of us, and. Our home movies were not normal home movies. They were very he'd film us at other kids' birthdays, getting jealous about their presents and stuff. But our birthdays are not filmed, and so it's like it's very strange in that sense. But but he would show them to us. So in a weird way, I have this. I don't know if it's a real memory or not, but I have this strange memory of those parts of my childhood because I've seen them when I was going through it. So there was this. Now that I look back on it, it was kind of this planting of a seed of some kind. He didn't do it on purpose, but it was about reflection and realism and all these other things that now I can look at, oh, maybe that's where that came from, or that's where this comes from. And then you contrast that with, because I grew up, my father and my mother were not together. So then you contrast that with like his kind of madness on one side and her stability, and then you kind of put the two together and you realize, oh, I can only understand that now because I have this now. And so it definitely wasn't a Yeah, it wasn't always like it wasn't like an artistic family in that sense. We're like, oh yeah, he was a filmmaker and my mother was a filmmaker. No, it was just a family.
So when you first told your parents what you wanted to do with your careers, how did they react to it and feel about it?
In my case, they didn't like me to be an actor at all, and because so basically they said, well, do whatever you want, but you also have to go to the university and study something real. And so at that time, I had some savings because I started working when I was 16 as a model as I was going to high school. So I had savings and I paid for my own acting school, and then they couldn't say anything, right? And then I got lucky that within just like less than 1 year, while I was at the acting school, I got cast on a TV show. It was horrible, but it paid really well. So it was like, you see, I can. And then it changed their perspective. They were like, oh wow, so actually this is something that you can make a living. Of course, that was a very good beginning, and the real life came afterwards. But that was my early beginnings as an actress. In Spain, I got to play different roles on television, and it was just a little bit of help with my family.
Yeah, I don't remember the moment where I said, because it was just kind of, in high school I would do stand-up comedy, and then I would do as characters, and my mom thought that was weird, because I would go up and willingly put myself up in front of the stage and play these people who kind of asked to be heckled, but it was impossible to heckle them. It was a very strange thing. So I think she just thought it was like a strange thing. And then of course we went to school and then, I guess it was all just a matter of, again, like work. Like when we went, it took us a long time to kind of, not to make our movies, but we were very diligent about it. We approached them with the mindset of, okay, this is work. We're going to approach this very seriously. It wasn't just this offhanded thing that we were going to do. Even every assignment I got in school, I was like, okay, if I'm going to pay for the film and get the film developed, I'm not just going to do 2 shots and a wide shot. I'm going to make a little movie here, and then everything mattered. And so there was a clear trajectory that like we weren't bullshitting about it in a weird way. It was like we were serious about it, and it took us a long time like to get to this point. It's been, I guess, almost 10 years, of making movies, and it was just one thing worked, and it was like, okay, this should open up the doors, and of course it doesn't. And then you have to work even harder. Like, oh, this is going to do it, and then that doesn't do it. And then you do it again, and then like, is this going to do it? And then it opens a little bit, and somebody shows you a door that you didn't know existed. You're like, oh, that's where that's been this whole time. So it's kind of this whole, it is like a long slog. But somebody asked me that, like, oh, I want to get into this, and I want to do that. And I was like, wow, but it's yeah, there's a lot. You have to kind of put in the time and the effort. But and I think that's kind of why I don't really have a moment where I was like, I want to go do this, and I was kind of brushed off. But
I feel like I've witnessed a lot of filmmakers say, if you love something else, go do that. And same for acting. That seems to be very common advice.
In my head, I always was like, probably could go back to physics.
And that's one of the things too. I think when people are looking at trying to create their own art, it's quite scary because you also have to financially support yourself at the same time. Have you had to do other jobs along the way to support that vision?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you name it. I don't know. Like, so basically, before I moved here, I was, as I said, I had a good early beginning in my country. But once I came here, I faced the ugly truth. So I did anything that would allow me time to continue pursuing my career, right? So mostly babysitting, teaching Spanish, doing some, whatever modeling, commercial modeling stuff. And not that much of the working in the evenings because it just didn't work for me. That kind of like, I'm not a night person at all, so it just didn't work for me in the mornings to be awake and trying to pursue acting. But I don't know, I sold jewelry on the streets. I don't know, I'm sure I'm forgetting jobs because I've done everything. I mean, street promotions, by passing out flyers, anything. Not anything. But. I'm just saying this because
I'm just saying when you see her film, not that.
Yeah, not that. That happens to my food. But I'm just only saying this because recently I did an interview with a journalist, and then I was just speaking naturally, like I'm speaking with you guys, and then he put at the head as the headliners. Of course, is in my country, which is just like they make things very sensational, I guess. Like she did everything and anything, the most humiliating jobs out there. And like, well, everyone is gonna think of the worst, whatever that means for everyone, but it's just not, I mean, no. Yeah, so, yeah, not those bad jobs that you're thinking, that they paid really well, but no. And in cash.
Yeah, we definitely did, I'm not going to go over everything. You have to do things to make a living. So, you know, we would do commercial projects here and there, and, you know, we were lucky to meet people who gave us some of those jobs, but we were, of course, always, it was always like we somehow got, we realized we could stretch a lot out of a little, and a lot of people saw that. So then what you'd think, oh, next time, no, but once you have that, it's like, oh, these are the people who can do a lot with a little, and then you're constantly doing that all the time for everybody. But we learned, use those kind of to learn, but you have to just take jobs and to get by, because I think the film before this, Heaven Knows What, nobody made any money except for the actors, and that was just made out of pure frustration because we couldn't get anything else made. It was like we were trying so hard to navigate the landscape of Los Angeles, and it just wasn't working. And we were doing stuff here, and everything was kind of, it just wasn't, nothing was right. So that film was just made like, okay, let's just do this now how we can. And same thing with the film before that, Lenny Cook. It was an opportunity where it was like, oh, let's make this now. And it was going to only take us 6 months and ended up taking 4 years. It was documentary. But in between those, we're doing little things here and there to just keep paying the rent on the space that we had, that we were sharing with a bunch of people. And yeah, it's definitely, it still is, you know. So.
In terms of financing your films, because I feel like that's also a very mystical area when people are interested in making content. It's, you know, it's one thing to say, well, I can put this on a credit card, but actually at the end of the day, you do need money to make films, even small films. You need to have a crew around you, you need to feed them, whatever those basic costs are. So how did you go about broaching it? Was it you going after the money? Did you find producers that were able to be integral to that process?
Well, I guess for all of the films, or just
kind of when you were starting out, and
okay.
Then I'm interested to hear if it's changed for you since you've.
You know, it's changed just in the sense of who we work with. Yeah. But the first short films, you know, you do put them on a credit card, and then you pay them off eventually, hopefully, you know. But you do put them on a credit card. I remember there was one where I finally paid off. I was like, oh wow, that was for a 35 millimeter print that I didn't have to make that, but and it was because it was shot on Video 8. It was a strange movie, but that was John's Gone. I mean, you can look it up online, but the early films, you are kind of, it's your responsibility, because a short film, there's really no way to get it out there except for you making it. So that is on you. So you kind of have to squirrel away some things to make that happen, and you're responsible for the crew. But everybody's kind of also, you're pulling in favors from a lot of people. And then the first features you make, or the first feature we made, we did pay people what we could, and it was, again, these relationships that we had developed through these smaller commercial projects. We got producers on board, and it wasn't a lot of money by any means, but it was enough to make the film, and that's what was important. And we've used that approach kind of until this day. And then with Good Time, yeah, there was like kind of a switch to where we started working with Oscar Boyson and Sebastian Bear-McClard, who we work with now, and then also just kind of finding the financiers who put up the money for Good Time. You know, they were very good, and they asked different questions, you know, that we weren't normally approached with, because before you're just used to asking yourself the questions like, is this necessary? Is that? But you have, you know, Terry, one of the producers, asking us like, well, he's like, I'm not pushing you in any direction, but I'm just asking, like, why is this here? And you kind of brush it off at the moment, but then you realize, wait a second, if he's thinking that, maybe somebody else is thinking that, and you kind of, it really made you a little bit more, made me a little bit more aware of the audience, you know, and how they're going to react about it. But just with the casting process, the only reason that this popped in my head was because there's a certain level of like cast that you need to do sometimes you need in your films, and for the role of Nick, I remember I was doing something with Ronald Bronstein, who my brother wrote the film with, probably in 2009, and we were developing a character that was similar to the one I play, but just he was younger, of course, because I was younger. And then as the film was getting, as the script was getting more and more refined, he thought, oh, let's bring that character into this film. But we decided to look to cast the part, and we looked at actors who had developmental disabilities, with people with developmental disabilities, to see if it was a possibility. And in the interview process, we realized this limit to our schedule and just kind of the time that we'd need to push people. It wasn't going to be fair to them, because we'd be pushing them out of their comfort zone, which is not something we wanted to do or how we wanted to make movies. But at the same time, we had to convince the producers that I could play the part. So what I did was I put myself on tape coming in for an audition as this character, and I think it was like a 25-minute tape, and I remember sending it to them, and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy is great. Let's cast him." And I didn't really do much else. My face changes a little bit, but I moved my hair, but I was like, okay, yeah, that's me, you know. And they're like, but it was like there's a level.
They didn't recognize your face at all.
No, it was because it was just a strange experience for them to witness that. But I just remember that was something that we would say, okay, yes, I could do it. I know I can do it. But now here it's like, okay, we need to prove. There's another step, like, okay, I need to prove that I could do it. And that was always the case with this character, was proving his realisticness, you know, and truthfulness to someone with those disabilities. And in the process of meeting all these people, that came into my brain, and I learned more there. But
that's amazing. I think you're the first filmmaker I've met that's auditioned for themselves, in essence. And obviously for both of you as well, with acting, how did that inform your casting process? Did you do rehearsal, and kind of just your general approach with your actors on set?
Well, I remember that, so we had a casting director, but due to our limited budget, we had to compromise certain things, which is like we have to put use our production office to hold the casting. And so the casting director provide us with the actors, but I was actually holding the auditions, right? And oh my God, I will take forever with each actor, just because it's just like I'm so close to that. And usually auditions are so cold. You walk in, you do your part, okay, bye. And you're like, okay, that's it. I've been thinking about this character for like whatever time, like sometimes only 24 hours, but it's very intense. And then you do what you can, and then you leave and you feel kind of empty. So I wanted for every single actor to don't feel empty at the end. That the producers were looking at me like, I mean, just don't give all this talk. Like, just let it go. I mean, and just, you know, so during the casting process, it was a little bit difficult for me, just because I didn't want to let them go without giving them like the full thankful, you know, warmth. And then during the shoot, I was also very concerned that because I played the lead, they were not going to feel they were, you know, taken care of by me, just because I would be so concentrated on my role. So basically, I just didn't care that much about my role, and spent all the little time we had to be with them and make sure that everyone understood what they had to do. And then I just said, okay, God, I hope I got this, just because I've been developing this project for so long, and is inspired by my own sort of like life in New York City and so on. But it did change me, just because I was very... And also one thing I realized is that, you know, I always heard as an actress, these directors that tell you, the second that person walked into the door, I know it. It was her or him. And I was like, damn it, how is that even possible? So they don't even give us a chance. But it happened to me too. And it's just like, I have to be honest about this because I learned something that as an actor, you think that you can play anything and you can prove anything, but there's something that you carry on, whether it's the role that you prepare at home and you walk in the audition or whatever it is, that it really comes across, and that's the first thing that as a director you receive. And I mean, for the most important roles in my film, it happened to me. The second I saw these people, I was like, oh my God, it's her. And even so, to the point that so I told the casting director, please do not send me anyone who is not a foreigner because I want real foreigners and so on. So this woman showed up with an incredible whole put together character with an incredible accent, and she fooled me. I cast her, and when she showed up on set, she sounded so American. I was like, wait, where are you from? And she's like, from Seattle, honey. I was like, what? I thought you were Italian. And she's like, yeah, I knew you weren't going to cast me otherwise. So there is hope too, meaning like, she did it so well that she just, fooled me. But what I'm saying is that, it just happened the second they walk into the door and I saw them.
I guess we worked with a great casting director, Jennifer Vendetti, and the process, we had worked with her before, and also there's like an element of street casting that was done, like led by Eleanor Hendricks, and that aspect of it was, okay, we had an idea for this character, and then they would kind of blanket certain areas that normally wouldn't be targeted for the parts, and we would get all these people in and these faces, and she would do these kind of improvs with them, and we would watch them, and then we would kind of go through and look at them, and then we would meet with them and kind of compare. And you could tell there are some people who do have it, there's something like they could say anything and it sounds real. No matter what it is, it could be the most ridiculous thing in the world, but if they say it, it sounds 100% real. And it's an unbelievable thing that not everybody has. But the person I'm thinking of in the movie is Gladys. She plays the mother of the young girl, and also the girl is great too. We found her an open casting call of 400 people, and she's great. And she'd never acted before, never had any desire. She had a desire because she was in acting in her school, but she never would go and put herself up for a casting call. And there was just something that said, go do this, and she came in, and you could just tell from the way that she carried herself, like you were saying, and just that she had something to say, with just her face and the way she spoke. And then just, working with the actors is always something, it's different each time, especially with my brother and I, it's depending on who kind of is vibing with the person the best in a specific moment. Eventually it kind of becomes this, we can both speak and it'll be hopefully the same voice. It helps that we sound similar. But in the case of, there was one time where I forgot. I was upstairs getting makeup on because I was in the hospital. I had kind of a prosthetic eye, and there was this actor who was I came down, and there was this something was just not right, amongst everybody. And I was like, we need to get this performance right. It's not working. And Josh was like, you've been upstairs for 2 hours. I'm like, yeah, something with makeup was wrong. So I came down, and this guy had not seen me before. And so I said, I'm wearing a hospital gown, and I've got all these bandages on, and a disgusting eye. And I just sat down across from the guy, and I'm like, all right, so this is what we're going to do. And I just start directing him. It looks like he literally looks like I've escaped from the hospital, and I've started talking and giving him direction. And then I pick up the boom, and I start booming the scene. He's like, and so the whole thing was so funny in that sense. But what I like about acting in the scene sometimes is that you can kind of work your way in very subtle ways. You can push people especially when you're not on camera, you can push people to do things they normally wouldn't do. With Rob, I could say right before the take, I would like dip out a little bit and just say like, get really close to me, it makes me uncomfortable. And then he would get close to me and it would make me uncomfortable. And if I didn't answer him, I knew he would want me to say the line, and I wouldn't say the line, and it would make him work 1,500 times harder to get me to say the line. And it was just like, so you can do those things if you're in it, and you can kind of push people in that way, which is, it's just like one step. You have one advantage, and then on top of that, Josh is behind the camera dealing with that. So there's kind of like a two-pronged attack in that way. But that's also why I like running Boom as well, is because you're kind of as close to the acting as possible, because you're right there. And I can see parts of the performance that you can't see from the camera. And those, I kind of feel like everything kind of does mold into itself, just the way somebody's hold it. If they're closed off, if they're open, you can kind of see all that from it's a different point of view from the set. And I like having that kind of different perspectives on the set for myself, just because it allows me to better understand each part of it. So.
One of the things I'm always curious about with filmmaking as well is there's so many stages at which you get feedback from people around you. When you're writing the script, people give you notes. When you're on set, people come up to you with ideas like, hey, have you thought about putting the camera over here? And then even when you're finished and you're showing it to people, and you're just getting so much feedback from so many different places, and how do you kind of level that voice in your head about what's a great idea, what's a brilliant note, and what is someone maybe not necessarily looking at it in the right way, or not necessarily a helpful piece of advice for it?
Yeah, so you just know. If somebody says, hey, put the camera here, you're like, no, that's not a good idea. Or if you just kind of, I guess it's a matter of, there is, at the same time, there is a level of openness we would have on the set to allow the right ideas to come through. There's a jail scene in particular where I play my character goes and takes the remote from somebody, and you're not allowed to do that in jail. So I take the remote from him, and he kind of gives me a chance. And then the idea was that I take it again, and I change the channel on television. There was a whole thing, and we had scripted this whole kind of block. We had blocked it all out with the stunt coordinator of how the fight was going to go down, how it was going to get hit, and then tackle, and all this stuff. But somebody who was there said, it wouldn't happen like that. And we're like, okay, well, how would it happen? And he said, I'd be here, somebody would be here, then he would be there, and then you would take the remote. And he started basically dictating everything. And so we said to the stunt director, okay, Jerome is running the set, and Jerome had control over where everybody was and what actor would say what line and where he would do this. So we kind of let him do that because he became the authority, So you do have to have an open ear to the authenticity of the idea, It isn't just somebody saying something to say something, it's because they actually do care about it. And I think that's important. And when an actor says, look, you can kind of feel and see them uncomfortable with the way it's written, you change it, so that it sounds more realistic coming out of their mouth. You're changing the dialogue, but you're not changing the idea, So there's a flexibility there. And it's just a matter of, being open to that and flowing with that kind of, that energy. And because so many times where if you do the rehearsal and you do this, and you just get into this rut and it feels dead, and there's nothing worse than that feeling on the set where you're just kind of going through these motions, and it's just like, ugh, like why? And sometimes you just want to change things just to excite it,
I had a experience in which, since it was my first time taking that position, and there was a level of concern from everybody, like does she really know what she's doing? And my script was unusual because of the form that is written, and then the way I wanted to shoot the film was also, making the producers raise their eyebrows. And for me, it was very important to, while I keep an open mind to whatever they had to say, be very focused on, I know this story. I visualized before I wrote it, and that's the way I wanted to tell this story, no matter what. I might be totally wrong, but if I do something that I don't believe in, then what's the point of all this sacrifice on my end? I put so much into this film, right? So that was something that it was a struggle, because, as I said, the script itself was raising many questions, and then same thing during the shoot, even though it was a respectful crew and everyone was just asking me, are you sure you don't want coverage? I was like, I am 100% sure. They were like, all right, okay. There you go. But then it changed when I went into the edit. So one thing it was important for me was to share with a few people that I trust their opinions, my early cuts, and see what if there were things that weren't clear. Or because for me, of course, everything was so clear, but then maybe for other people weren't. And there I learned that I had to make sacrifices and cut entire scenes out of the film just because they weren't really going to what I wanted. And so over there I was way more open, and it was a huge learning experience and humbling experience, the whole editing process.
Yeah,
And when you won the grand jury prize at South by, everyone knew that you knew what you were doing.
It's funny that editing process is something that's like I in a weird way I look forward to that, because again it comes back to life, because nothing is sacred in our minds. You could have spent the most money on a specific scene, and if it doesn't fit, you're gonna cut it out of the movie, and it doesn't matter. It's like there's this like we just kind of have this feeling of, especially with this movie, there was an idea of how long can an audience suspend their ability to not think further ahead than the main character, and if they did, then they would kind of they'd understand certain things that we might not want them to think about. So literally 30 seconds would matter in the movie, and if something lingered for that longer, it was too much. And so we didn't have test screenings, but we would have screenings with people who had no idea who we knew who had any idea about the process. Of course, they were familiar with the movies we had been making, but just kind of that ruthlessness of just like, okay, if it isn't working, it isn't working, and we would go back and try and edit it to make it work, but then you can always see if it's not, like, you can always feel it. And so it's just it's a ruthless thing, but I kind of enjoy that part of it.
Oh, I almost cried because there was a lot of actors that came just for one scene, and then those scenes were cut out, and I was just like, oh my God, they've been saying I'm in your movie, and I was like, oh Jesus, no, you're not in the movie anymore, and like it was just like, it really, and also from an actor point of view, like you get so excited, and then it was for me, that brutality that you enjoy, I was like tearing. And
well, because the thing I guess I feel is that if because then it's like there are certain there was like somebody's scene was much longer, but if that actor's scene was longer, it wouldn't be as memorable, in a certain way. I'm totally serious. And so now there was one scene in particular where it was like, oh my God, took us so hard to edit and figure it out, but it got to the point where somebody actually said, oh, that's my favorite scene in the movie, and I was like, it was our least favorite, but it was like this person's favorite, and it was a matter of paring down performance, changing the length, really messing around with it. But the people become much more iconic, and it's just a matter of, I guess for us, it's always the maximum minimum amount for everything, And even for me, it was tough because it's like there were scenes that I did that were, I think they were like, we covered them on my end. They were like 45 minutes of actual stuff, and it was good. It's just it ended up being like 2 lines in the movie. In the beginning there's like that whole I don't know if forever anybody who's seen it. There's an interrogation that goes on between my lawyer and the psychiatrist from the beginning of the movie. There's like 3 lines of that, but we literally covered it for like 45 minutes, and it goes very long in all different directions and different heights, peaks and valleys, and so, but it's like it doesn't work, so we cut it out, and it's like I'm doing it to myself, so in that sense I feel like it's okay, because it's like I'm not just doing it to anybody, but I just feel like at every stage the movie still needs to feel alive, because by the end of it, it still has to be exciting in some way. That's
also one of the really interesting things as well, is that a final version of a film is never quite 100% what you set out to do at the beginning. It's like, it's there, but there's so many different changes and there's so many challenges and battles along the way. And, you're shooting outside and it's raining today. What are some of the battles that you face that actually the solution has led to something that you feel like is better than what you originally planned? If there are any.
Yeah. Oh, there's a ton. Well, I guess just by nature, the restrictions that you have on certain things will force you to make decisions that you might not normally have to make. So, with the, I guess I don't know. I'm trying to think of, because there were a lot of instances where it's like, okay, you can't get this alley, you need to get this alley, and it's like, okay, well, that's not exactly where we thought it was, and then you end up having to piece together all of these different places, and it ends up creating a much more kind of vivid portrait of the city, where we run in this way and there's no alley there, but then we cut to like 5 blocks later, and then you create this maze of places, and then there's a door, and you film it so you can cut it all together, and in a way it was a compromise because we wanted to just be able to run into a place, have the scene, and then go into something else, but we had to cover it from all these different places, but then that allowed us to get onto the rooftop and shoot it from there. So those kind of little hurdles that you get are helpful. And then there's the scene where Rob's character, Rob Pattinson, he's running away from when my character runs through some glass, fall down, the police arrest me, and he keeps running. That's an example of where we didn't have, there was something where it was like we had to kind of just get that shot. And so we did whatever we needed to do to get the shot. And so Josh and I are standing in the street, like just like holding this, and the cars are honking and all this stuff. And I was like, what is going on right now? And we're just like, just go. And then but he ran with this look of abject fear. And that was like, part of it was this whole element of it kind of culminating into this moment. But yeah, and then I guess there's also things that you at the same time, it's like, we only did that a little bit better, because you can feel that little bit of compromise. But for the most part, it was like, with the smoke, when there's a bag that explodes, a dye pack, and a way to figure out how to do that properly with it being, not dangerous, the stunt coordinator came like, the holy powder, this is a great idea. And it's this, he had this crazy idea to like hook up just a shop vac in reverse to a bag filled with this holy powder stuff. And we did the first take and we're like, oh my God, that worked, and it just like had the whole camera filled with red and we're covered in red. And it was like perfect. And it was just, that was one of those things where you couldn't, if you wanted to do it with computer graphics, you could have, or we wanted to do it practically. So there was a moment where you just kind of have to work with what you have, and it ends up making it that much more iconic. So.
Do you have anything on your film?
I mean, like the first half of my film, it is scripted, but there is a lot of improvisation that happened with just random people from the street. And so the actors are planted into the scenes, and then there were dialogue, but then things change and evolve depending on whatever was happening. So, like, a lot of things just end up being something else that is not exactly what I had in mind, but often the things that happened were even better. Like, for instance, I was obsessed into shooting in one location that is just like a maze of in between buildings, and I lost the girl that I'm babysitting and running after her. Whatever, we couldn't get that location, and we shot somewhere else that was okay, not exactly what I wanted. But in one of those takes, a little kid is running with a bicycle, and I just asked him, so what did you see this girl? And I mean, the kid doesn't know that we're filming. The camera is really far. And the kid is, oh my God, what is this child? Can I help you? And then, we went and look for the girl. And then afterwards, I have to tell him, no, it's a movie. Where's your mother? I need to sign a release. All these things. But it happened all the time. Same thing in Chinatown. I was supposed to be looking for an address. And I was like, okay, so the best way to shoot this is just like, all right, camera, follow me. And unbelievable. I mean, the camera was right behind me. And these people in Chinatown were like completely oblivious. like passing through the camera, which was fantastic for me because it's exactly what I wanted. But like, I mean, then you run after them, like they don't even speak English. So anyway, they're there in the film. Not recognizable faces, of course.
There was a moment there's a big mall scene, it's a Flushing mall, and we had full permission to shoot there. You know, we could have done everything we wanted. And we go in there, but we act like we're stealing the shot. We have a camera placed here, we're going to call it, nobody's going to know we're doing it, and we would run through the scene. And the cop is like, they know they can do whatever they want here, right? To the locations manager. And Samson's like, yeah, he's like, this is just what they're doing. You know, this is how they're going about it. But then we asked him, like, what's the one rule that we can't break? And he said, just don't hit anybody when you're running through. And that became it was like, okay, that's the direction, you know. We can run through this crowd of 300 people in the supermarket, but don't hit anybody. So you really had to, like, maneuver your body and run as fast as you can, but doing that and dodging people really affected your performance, and then the camera had to follow you. So that changed everything. Just this cop saying, don't hit anybody, definitely affected everything. And it was like, okay, yes, that's the direction. Yeah, listen, Rob, like, don't hit anybody. And then, of course, I'm running too, but then we had our extra who was planted there, and he knew he was going to get hit. But but the cop didn't know he was an extra because he fit in perfectly. And so he said, don't hit anybody. And the first time we roll, bow right into him. And it was just, he's like, what? He's like, all like freaking out. And gets up, we do it again. He's like, oh, okay, this is a part of the whole thing. But yes, he knows what's happening here.
For both of you, you've both had really amazing festival trajectories between you. You've been to South by, you've been to Tribeca, to Cannes. How did you begin that journey of figuring out what festival am I going to apply to? Where am I going to try and get my film? How many places should I apply? Should I send my film everywhere at once or strategically one at a time? Because I think that's a big thing that people have to try and figure out when they are first making their own content and throughout.
Yeah, it was. For me, it was in college. I submitted the film I made, the final film I made in college. I just submitted it to the Directors Fortnight in Cannes, and just did it. And then at the same time, my brother submitted his first feature, and I remember just like, okay, like well, it was just a lark, you know, for me. And then I got a phone call, and they said, hey, is this Benjamin Safdie? I said, yes, it is. And like, well, your film got into the Directors Fortnight. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. It was like insane. And then they called me again, but they were trying to reach my brother, but they saw we had the same last name, but they didn't know we were brothers. And I just heard this conversation going back and forth, and they couldn't. I'm trying to call Josh, he's not answering, and all this stuff. And finally he wakes up, and I call him like screaming into the phone. I was like, we both got it. And he's like, we both got it. I said, yeah, I sent it's short too. The other thing that was before that, though, was every short I made, I would just submit it to festivals, you know, and I didn't know what they were. I would do research about them, but I'd use Without a Box at first, but then I realized it was better to send it, like go onto the website and go and find the person and send it to them directly and kind of personalize it as much as I could to kind of stand out amongst because it's like the deluge of the people that it's so easy to just kind of submit it. This is, I guess, before the links, really, you'd send DVDs, so you'd make a nice package for the DVDs and all this stuff, and as best as you could, but it still had a handmade quality to it. But you'd submit it to the festival, and it got into one place, and it was like, okay, got into Slam Dance, this one short film I made. So I got on a plane, I went to Park City, I was by myself, and I stayed at this place, which is like, for like skiers, it's like $20 for a bed, and you sleep in a room with 40 people, and everybody's sleeping because they're skiing at 4 in the morning, and they're going to sleep at 4 p.m. And I just remember hearing these people like snoring so loudly, and one guy in the corner being like, stop, please, like, please. He's like, you're not snoring, you're screaming. And it was like all this stuff, and like, but all these things add to your kind of your feeling of just going through the process. But again, I would go and I'd see as many films as I possibly could. And I would make it just like, I want to make sure that I'm seeing everything. And I want to make sure that I'm saying hello to everybody and meeting everybody and understanding how this process works. And then you meet somebody who may be at another festival, and then you submit there. And of course, there were certain festivals that you'd built up in your head, and then you never get into them, and you're like, it's like, but it is strange, because then it's like, then I did help out on some, at like watching some programming, and realized everybody watches the movie at some point. It is a matter of, sometimes you get the wrong person, but and they watch it and they don't like it, and then you're not going to get on to the next thing, and then that happens. But it really was for us blindly sending in, and then once you're in, you do everything you can to see every movie and make sure that you're there and known by people. And when we went to the director's fortnight, I think we basically just, the movie would end and we would just stay in our seats, because we knew we would just wait for the next movie to come around. And they were like, you've seen more movies than some of us on the programming committee have seen. And they were like, not really, but they were just saying, like, you basically are one of us. And that was the idea, was we just wanted to acquaint ourselves with the work around, and also just be a part of whatever community they were trying to build, because they are, if you watch all the films, there is kind of a goal of each year, and just kind of being able to talk about that with everybody is helpful. But I guess it is, yeah, you just have to do that blind faith, hey, maybe, and it over and over again, and sometimes it doesn't get in anywhere, and then you can show it. You can create your own things, and that's what we would do for a while. We'd have our own little festivals and show them there, or show them at places, and create these events. And eventually people go to there, and then they see that. So it's in a way, it's forging your own kind of way forward, but you are at the hands of other people seeing it, but know that they will see it, if you put in the work and you really do believe it's good. So.
Well, I just want to add that in my case, I did have some sort of a strategy, which is a basic strategy. It's just like certain, I'm sure you know, but in case you don't, it's like certain film festivals, they do require that the film it's world premiere at that specific festival. So that's important to give those film festivals a priority. And it might take a whole year to just apply to those and wait, because those can change your life and others don't. And that is the truth. I mean, I've been to so many film festivals. I'm married to a film director, and he's done 1,000 short films. And I've seen what certain festivals can do for you, and what others, as much fun as they are, they just. So, that's, if you are in that situation right now thinking of what to do, you have to be patient. I mean, it took me 1 year to get to where I eventually premiered my film, but the strategy behind was like, I have to go for the A-list festivals, and if not, then I'll just go to the other tier. But that is very important, because those festivals, as I said, they really push your career forward.
But you would be surprised, because it's like there were certain times, like there was one festival in Boston in particular that it didn't have a national profile at all, but for some reason this one year there was a lot of filmmakers who were playing their films there that happened to be part of a larger kind of movement. And I submitted my film there, and it got in. I was like, great, and it was the only place it got in. So we went, made all these postcards, and treated it as if it was going to change our lives, and of course it didn't really, but we met people there who it was just in a weird way, eventually you do know, oh yeah, this, if you get in here, you're not going to be able to play there. It's a little bit more stringent with feature films than it is with short films. Yeah. But there are still some that they require the world premiere. I know Venice requires world premiere all the time, and Cannes too. Or not, there's certain sections of Cannes. But yeah, so for me, when we got a short film into Venice, it was like, this is like, it was also, there are certain milestones that you hit, but there was, I know South by Southwest was like, that was one festival that was the only one to take certain films of ours, and it was at that time, it was kind of like, it wasn't yet where it was now. So they were still kind of forging forward, but they still had this mentality even later on, so they played the first, Josh's first feature. They played a bunch of short films that I had made and that we'd made together. But I guess it's funny because there's some that you don't think would change, but they somehow end up in a weird way do. But you do have to be a little bit more selective with a feature film. But that's.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback off both of you guys, since I work on the festival side, those are all very true, very great points. And I think the biggest thing, I always like to repeat this piece of advice that our head of shorts programming says, and she basically says, you only get to pop your cherry once. She refers to premiering your film as like a virginity. It's like, you only get to play it the first time somewhere, so really think conscientiously about where that's gonna be, how you wanna have it. And every film does get watched all the way through. That's another common question that we get. Like, do you really watch all the films? Yeah, we watch hundreds of films. It's a lot. Yeah. Our eyes start bleeding, but we love it. So I have a couple of questions from the audience. So Amelia is asking both of you, since you've both done work based on your true lives, how do you navigate that? Do you talk to the people in your life about it? And do you feel the need to alter the truth to protect people ever?
Yeah, you do talk about it. And then at the same time, there's also kind of an understanding that this is the path that you've taken, and you're going to explore parts of your life that are going to be uncomfortable for both you or maybe some of the people around you. And it's just kind of it's an understanding. I think back to Daddy Longlegs, which is semi-based on, not semi, it's parts of it are based on our childhood, but it's not, it's an exaggeration. And you do exaggerate things because mainly if you tell them exactly as they are, they're not going to kind of affect people in the same way they affect you. So that's just a fact. You tell somebody a story about exactly what happened to you on the way here, they're going to be bored. So if you want them to feel how you felt, you're going to make it a little bit more exciting. So you're going to change things. And it's and like I know in Daddy Long there's a scene where the two kids get given a sedative to keep them sleeping so that the father can go to work. And they're like, did your father really drug you? And my dad even asked me, did I drug you guys? And I was like, no, you didn't. And I was like, but there were a lot of things that we could have put in that if he had done, people would have just gotten up and left the audience. It was something bad things, sometimes. But he even was like, did I do that? And I'm like, well, we were sleeping, we wouldn't know. But he's like, no, you didn't actually drug us. But again, in the movie, it feels like it's real. There is this aspect to it. But I think it's all a matter of how you're treating the characters. If it's with love or an affection, that says a lot. In that film, it was there were parts that were critical, but overall it was an understanding of the character. And I think it's just a matter of not taking advantage, but you're trying to actually learn something from it. So, and I guess it's, I don't know if we change things to protect people. It was just we would change things to get the point across.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, it was almost everything reflected to me. So I kind of had to make decisions on what do I want to show and what do I want to alter to be more dramatic. And so I did the same thing as Benny. Certain things were not as exciting as I lived them. But for me, they were, at the time that I lived them, they were very intense. So kind of I modified the script to just make those parts of the story, more impactful. In terms of protecting other people, as I said, mostly it was me, but there's a couple of characters that are there that they're pretty much exactly the truth as they were, and I just make sure that I didn't use their names.
And one from Edith. As actors and directors, how do you stay truthful and productive to each craft during the mayhem of production? Any tools, methods, or special process? Thanks.
I guess, yeah, for when you're acting in the scene that you're, I guess it's a matter of, there were certain times where in this past film, especially there's an end scene where I'm actually in a room with a bunch of people with real developmental disabilities, run by a teacher who runs this group. It's a drama group, and there's kind of these exercises that she has that she works with them with. And I entered the group, but I didn't want to enter them as an actor, because the line between that, it's of understanding of okay, if I went in speaking the way I'm speaking, and then all of a sudden I became the character, it would be very jarring, and in a way it would be perceived the wrong way, and it's not how I wanted to be perceived. So in that sense, Josh and I felt, okay, you need to be in character the entire day. So you're not gonna ever be allowed to break character. So I had to be this person the whole day, and in the room I was that person, and at lunch I was that person, at dinner I was that person, and it was very draining for me physically and emotionally because I was kind of shutting off things that I wanted to say, and I was shutting off people that wanted to talk to me, but it was a necessary thing to do for the comfort of everybody else. And that was just a matter of managing people's feelings and the crew, and to get the performances from the people in the group. You know, they needed to believe that I was a part of the group as well, and I wasn't just pretending to be a part of the group, because I was trying to be the character as much as I could, but you can't go in one way and then just change. You know, you have to, that was something we took into account, and just being sensitive to that, what I thought was important. And
yeah, I guess to keep it productive, I think that was your question. In my case, that I was the producer and then the director and the lead actor, I think it was just like, just taking everything in that moment and not thinking about anything else, meaning like, okay, now I am acting, so I'm not gonna worry if we're going over time and it's gonna cost more money and I don't know where I'm gonna get the money, and like, I just kind of like control parcelize those roles that I was playing. Just, I think that was the way to be as productive as I could be, and also don't lose my mind.
Wonderful. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I just want to quickly, because your films are both really, really beautifully shot, fantastic storytelling, I'd love for you to just tell everyone very quickly how they can watch your films, if they're online, available anywhere at the moment, or down the line.
So my film is on Amazon and also on iTunes, and it's called Most Beautiful Island.
And then Good Time is actually on Amazon Prime right now. So if you have an Amazon Prime membership, you can just watch it. And it's also on iTunes and Amazon Pay for it. You can buy it on iTunes. You can buy it on DVD. So it's basically everywhere, really. So please see it if you haven't.
So everyone should leave here tonight and jump on Amazon. Yeah. Thank you so much, and good luck with the Spirit Awards.
Thank you so much.